All right, well, thank you everyone for joining Bridge Over Troubled Waters, our virtual onboarding during COVID-19 discussion, where we here at TalentRise and Akara Solutions are spending time talking to TA leaders around the country who are learning on the job in the process of moving their organization from wherever they were before to wherever they are now, in adapting to this virtual onboarding, recruitment, and interviewing life that we're all living now. And so I'm your host, Kristen Lampert. I will be spending the next 45 minutes interviewing a fantastic guest of ours. I want to talk through just a couple housekeeping items. One is I've got everybody on mute. If you can also make sure that your videos are closed so that we have our two speakers, myself and Tunde, through the discussion would be great. We also have chat features. So we are asking those that have questions to please put it in the Zoom chat. And we've got someone on the back end who will be helping us kind of funnel in questions. We'll spend about the first 30 minutes going through just a regular good old interview. And then we're gonna go into about 15 minutes of Q&A. Many of the questions have already been submitted, and then we'll kind of just explore together. The other thing I wanted to highlight is I'm asking everyone, if you don't mind, to also weigh in on a poll. So we actually had a question that we want to get a sense of our audience. We've got a lot of folks on the line today, and we're curious to know where your company is on the virtual workforce spectrum. And so I'm going to launch a poll and encourage you to go ahead and answer this question. So the way we have it is it's either normal for you, this has already been the way you operate. It's 100% new for you as a company because you've never had, you've had a more traditional workforce. The third option is you've been wanting to go virtual, and this kind of propelled you faster in that direction than maybe anticipated. And if you don't really fit any of these categories, you can just opt out of the survey. So I'm going to go ahead and we're waiting for folks to weigh in. We've got about 50% of you are weighing in, and so far it's looking like the majority of you, this is normal for you. But I'm seeing about 30% so far saying we're traditional, so we'll give it another minute and we'll end the poll. And this helps us understand what you're most curious about and how to guide the conversation. I also want to plug our next speaker for the next round. We're going to be shifting from the onboarding topic and into how to lead through crisis. And with that, we're going to be introducing Paul Abrams, who is the Vice President of Talent Management and Acquisition at Huron Consulting Group. So you'll be hearing from him shortly in 2 weeks on the 13th of May. So we'll go ahead and end the poll. Thank you everyone for participating. And I'm happy to share the results. So, ta-da, we've got about 38% of you are saying that this is normal for you. About 31% are weighing in and saying it's totally not normal. This is the complete opposite of normal. And that about 20 or so percent of you are in that space of we intended to go this way, but wow, we really had to pivot. So thank you for sharing that feedback. We'll go ahead and keep that in consideration as we go through this discussion. So without further ado, I'd love to share our guest, and I'm happy to have Tunde Kolarinwa here with us. He's out of Canada, and working as the Vice President of Talent Management for Rexall Pharmacy Group, which is a subsidiary brand of McKesson. He has been leading since 2016 the entire talent team, and it serves as a senior leader on the team. He's been a huge champion of many initiatives, including developing the company's first employment value proposition, overhauling their campus recruiting strategy, and launching iLead, which is a competency-based leadership model across the entire platform. Prior to his experience at Rexall, he has worked for Intact, Target Canada, and Cara Operations, among a number of notable HR roles. He and I share many things in common. So we've learned through this process that we both love education. We have a curiosity for learning. We very much value diversity and inclusion in business. We both have 4-year-old, very rambunctious, like little toddlers and terrors, depending on the day. And we have a shared love for gummy bears. So thank you, Tunde, for joining us today.
Thanks, Kristen. Really appreciate the introduction.
Absolutely. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen and we're going to go into a conversation about just you and I. So let me go ahead and just move this over and maximize us. And I can't tell if you can see this. Stop share. There we go. And here we are. So my Microsoft wants to update, and here we are. So Tunde, I'm so pleased to have you here and excited to be having this conversation with you. I want to maybe just give our folks here on the phone and on the line a little more context about who Rexall is and how you've been kind of managing through COVID-19. So give us a little background about your company and what's been going on.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the introduction, Kristen. And thanks to everyone who's dialed in. I'm hoping today you're able to get some nuggets as to what, how to start virtual onboarding and take a little bit of insight as to how we have been able to get our started and muddle through as well. So Rexall Pharmacy Drugstore, we're a retail drugstore organization, and we've been designated as an essential service here in Canada. We have about 414 stores located as far west as BC and as far east as Ottawa. So we're not in the foremost eastern parts of Canada as yet. We have about 9,000 employees across the enterprise, obviously, with the bulk of them being in our stores. We have a mix in Ontario and in some provinces out west of union and non-union staff. Majority of our staff in Ontario at our stores, our hourly staff, are unionized. And with regards to our HR team, for example, we're a mighty team of 30. Within that team, we have a mix of payroll, total rewards, benefits, TA, learning and development, talent and culture team, as well as HR teams as well. I'm responsible for the talent management team, and within that, my portfolio, I have about 10 people on my team, and that portfolio looks after our talent attraction team, a mighty team of 4, our learning and development team, a mighty team of 3, and our talent and culture team, a mighty team of 2. I like to say we are that little engine that could. We continue to do a lot within the organization. And when we actually step back and take a look, we are always amazed at what we've been able to accomplish. So I'm very, very humbled and proud of the team that I lead at Rexall.
Yeah. Well, in talking about humbled, I know that when you started the onboarding process, you had just rolled out maybe a non-virtual version of onboarding a couple weeks before COVID.
Yeah, for sure.
Walk us through a little bit about what was there before and what you had done.
So what was there before we started this project was pretty much just a mix of different things. Like, it was very dependent on the leaders. And we heard that through our EOS and through exit interviews that we completed. Where based on the data, we were able to determine that, some folks started off really high with us and then started to wane. And when people left, some of the things that they said was, there was no training, that wasn't set up for success, and so on and so forth. So we embarked on this journey, partnering with an external vendor, Metrics, who was able to help us design an onboarding process. Now, our onboarding process was founded on our ICARE values, which stands for integrity, customer first, accountability, respect, and excellence. And one of the things that we set out to do was ensure that we were grounded in that. And when you look at our overall mission statement as an organization, taking care of Canadians' health one person at a time, we felt that we needed an onboarding program that would set people up for success to ensure that we were able to meet that mission statement that we had. Set up for ourselves, what we did was we pulled together a cross section of leaders within the organization. One of the things that we've really tried to do is ensure that a lot of the projects that we're working on are not specific or owned only by a department. We look to leverage the talent across the enterprise. So we had folks from our operations team, we had folks from our merchandising team, folks from our store ops team, our pharmacy services team as part of the project team to help build this and stand this up. Part of the rationale behind it is to ensure that there was buy-in at the outset and throughout the process. And then we're also able to build champions as we went through the process. So as a result of this, what we came up with was a 3-week onboarding process. And I like to say here, onboarding doesn't stop at 3 weeks. Onboarding is an ongoing journey. I'd like to say at the very least, it's a full year of getting people set up for success. But we really curated and came up with a schedule for the first 3 weeks, or created a framework around onboarding for the first 3 weeks. The design of which is, for the first week, it's really about building connections. Building connections is integral to any success that anyone is going to have within an organization, because relationships will get you through. Our firm belief is that the results are easy to get. For me personally, I think anybody can get the results. It's really how you get those results, right? How do you leverage relationships that you have going forward? And how do you develop yourself as an individual? So it was really that setup. So the first week is about building connections with the team, with the greater team, with the organization. The second week is about learning on the job, and that's through a lot of job shadowing. And then the third week is what we call reverse job shadow, where you are actually doing the job, but somebody is supporting you as you go through the process. Another unique piece that we added to it was the concept of a peer mentor. So this is someone that is assigned to you as you go through the journey, your onboarding journey. And this person serves as someone you can lean on, that is not necessarily your manager, usually a peer who can walk you through your journey, walk you through the trials and tribulations that they faced, and really give you that down-to-earth feel and experience, realistic experience, so individuals are comfortable and are set up for success as they go through.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you've got a 3-week kind of orientation program that's grounded on your values. You built that program over the course of, it sounds like a pretty thoughtful process. So how long did it take you guys to build out, kind of the onboarding program with those stakeholders? What was that journey?
So being in the retail space, we move very fast. I like to joke with people that we're recruiting into our team is that, we're like a little speedboat, and we shoot out of the gate and we maneuver and we go over waves and so on and so forth. At Rexall, we like to say our DNA stands for being driven, nimble, and accountable. So we definitely had to be very nimble through this process. I would say it took us about three to 6 months to really bake this out. And 3 months to really come up with a concept, conduct interviews, understand what the gaps are. And then I would say another 2 months to really walk through a proper change management plan, where we're able to sell the idea or sell the initiative to folks within the business, gain buy-in, and then go full speed, basically.
Yeah. So you had launched this pivot. So, you have the plan, which is a wonderful thing to have. And then in the midst of it, you had to move your workforce to a virtual environment. So what challenges did you face in having to implement that plan or change that plan in the context of COVID?
So the first thing is obviously COVID being this big, massive unknown that no one is aware of. The second is we've just gone through one change and now we have to change again. So luckily our appetite for change within the organization, being a retail organization, is I would say medium to high, in some instances dependent on the manager. So what we wanted to do is, what are the points of resistance? How are we going to address these points of resistance, and how are we going to mitigate the fears of our managers? Because we started hearing from some managers saying, I don't want to hire anymore. And when we asked the question, why, is because how am I going to onboard someone virtually when I'm not there? So I sat with a cross-section of leaders. I sat with the TA team. I sat with the learning and development team, and also pulled in the HR team as well, to talk through, okay, what are the steps? What goes through? What are the steps that are involved as soon as we hire somebody? So from offer letter stage all the way through to the end of our onboarding. So based off of that, we were able to talk through, how we're going to have to change, in some instances, our offer letter process. So how do we incorporate DocuSign into that process? What message do we send to individuals after they've joined the organization? What does the welcome letter look like? What changes, and so on and so forth? How involved do we want the hiring manager to be through this process? Whereas before, the hiring manager could just show up on the first day and meet someone at the door. Now we decided we're going to pull the hiring manager in a lot earlier to walk people through, because just like we are navigating through COVID, those folks are also, the new employees are also navigating through COVID. First, a change in scenery, a new job is a massive change. And then to go through a change in this COVID environment is even bigger and grander. And one of the things we're really concerned about was the human connection, because whereas in the past you just walk into the office, you make eye contact with somebody and you're able to connect that way, this is missing. So we're able to sit with the team. We're able to quickly pivot a lot of the content that we had in our structured onboarding plan and place that on our learning platform, which we call iLearn, which is powered by Absorb. And we were able to, one of the bigger pieces was the technology, right? How are you able to get the technology to the new hire in time for their first day? And what technology are we going to use to be able to even have a discussion with them, to take them through orientation and so on and so forth. So luckily for us, we had our HR business partner who would be in the office every other week. Our onboarding schedules are such that we only hire people or start people twice a month. So we have consolidated orientation and consolidated onboarding days, which means you're able to get some volume in there as well. So typically we get anywhere from 5 to 10 folks that are starting within that window. Sometimes you get 1 or 2. But because we have those consolidated days, it's easier for us to scale whatever it is that we're trying to do versus having someone start every single week or midweek. So the HRBP sends out the material, which includes a lot of our now you've been hired collateral, as well as your equipment, so laptops and so on and so forth, to the new hire. The hiring manager, new hires typically get in on a Friday. The hiring manager then engages them on that Friday to say, hey, guess what? Your technology will be arriving on said date. Someone from IT will be reaching out to you either later today or tomorrow. So sometimes Friday, Saturday, they will get in contact with them. And then come Monday, they're set up for success. On Monday, the first thing that they do is a FaceTime call, either, an in-person, a virtual call, either through FaceTime, either through Zoom like now, or through Teams. Teams is what we really, really leverage as an organization. And they walk them through what their next 3 weeks will look like. So there's the setup. And the new hires also get the onboarding guide. So they already have that and have an idea of what they're going to be going through, because we feel the more information that they have ahead of time, the better, the more relaxed they are, the more comfortable they are. And when they show up, their calendars are already packed with all the meetings that they have to be attending, all the connections that they'll be making, and so on and so forth. So they don't feel like they're just flailing in the wind and they're not doing anything and just sitting at home.
Yeah.
And we obviously peppered a lot of in-person touch points throughout their first day, at least 3 touch points with the hiring manager, and then at least 1 throughout the rest of the week.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, I love the advice around consolidated orientations, because the truth is the volume of activity, it does take more concerted effort across the organization to kind of get folks across the finish line. And I think a lot of organizations sometimes see that adding somebody or getting them in the door might be the higher priority versus getting it done right and having the integrity of the process intact. So what I think you're offering to our audience here is stick with, do maybe more concentrated efforts so that you have a really great process and you haven't compromised the integrity of your process. So it sounds like you haven't had to, shift for, take your 3-week vision and modify it to something smaller or just cut it out. So you've been able to hold that integrity.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that structure gives the managers some comfort as well, because they know what to expect. And it gives the new employee a lot of comfort too, because at the end of the day, onboarding, if you start from a premise of it's not about us as the employer or the hiring manager, it's about the new hire that's coming on board. Then you have the right mindset, and then everything becomes easy after that because you're thinking about them. You start from a place of empathy for them and not just for yourself.
Yeah. Well, and you talked about, hiring managers. You've had to push more pressure onto hiring managers to take a stronger role. And I'm curious to know, how have your hiring managers reacted to that? Have you had resistance? If so, how have you kind of channeled that? Because I know that those hiring managers are also adjusting to even managing teams in a virtual world.
Yeah, most definitely. And one of the things that we did for our hire managers, for the most part, is we've curated a curriculum about how to manage remotely. And managing remotely is a ton of things, from a technology perspective. So how do you leverage teams? How do you leverage teams effectively? What are the tools can you use to manage productivity with your team? So things like To-Do app from the Microsoft suite. And also, the emotional component of it, and really understanding that it's not always about productivity right off the bat. Like, this is really a moment where we really need to connect on a human level, and that will help you throughout the journey with new leaders. So to get over that hump with them is providing them with the right tools, B, grounding them in our values. So very much going back to eye care and saying, guys, like, we need to treat every single customer, internal, external, with our eye care values, right? We have something that we call our all-in experience framework as well, which is again grounded in our eye care values. It really stands for acknowledge, listen, lead with solutions, individualize, and nurture the relationship. So, going to them and saying, guys, we really need to acknowledge the state that we're in right now. We need to listen to what our folks are saying. And if you go back to our engagement surveys and exit interviews, we need to set people up for success right off the bat. And then lead with solutions. At some point, you gotta be smart about how you're gonna onboard people within your own organization. We can provide you that framework, but you still have to make it your own. And then individualize. Get to know that person, individualize the experience of that individual, and then obviously nurture the relationship. So we're able to leverage that. And then when we look at our I-Lead competencies as well, which stands for inspire, leverage, execute, advance, and develop self and others, grounding the discussion or the interaction back in those three core pieces really helped drive the information. And again, the fact that we took care of them and provided them with all the tools that they required. We faced some resistance, but it wasn't that bad. It wasn't anything that we couldn't get over. And then we also had the buy-in from the senior leadership team as well. So the executive leadership team who was on board with our programs and the ideas that we had.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you're offering, which is, sometimes you forget when you're hiring folks that productivity isn't the first goal. And that's what I'm hearing you say. It's connection. It's building that connection to team, connection to leader, connection to purpose or mission that will help drive productivity versus, saying day one, all right, your computer started, go get to work. So true. What do you do for to build a personalized experience? So like, how would you say, Rexall separates itself as far as building a sense of the human touch, getting people really building that connection?
So one of the things that we do is obviously on your first day when you come on board, there's the memo that goes out that says, hey folks, here is Tunde, he's just joined the team. Welcome Tunde to the team, and so on and so forth. We use Yammer as well as a resource where we also use that to announce that, hey, here is another person that's joined the team. And then you see people saying, hey, welcome to the team, and so on and so forth. One of our most recent hires on the TA team, I actually had 2 people go through this process. I think I have the most in the organization that have gone through this virtual onboarding process. She shared on LinkedIn that she just joined the team, and we had a few VPs who commented on her LinkedIn profile. We had the GM of the organization comment on her LinkedIn profile as well. And she's like, Tunde, you don't know how much that made me feel. So there's things like that we do within the organization. In addition to that, that first week is pivotal. That first week is where you get to meet your team. That first week is where you get to meet the grander team that you'll be working with. We tend to position it as that first week you really connect with the HR team, specifically because for me, it was an HR person that we hired. So spend time with your team, spend time with the grander HR team, connect with them. We strongly encourage our teams to have face-to-face interactions virtually. Like I said, Teams has been a godsend when it comes to a collaboration tool. So that's really helped out. Little things, little tokens of appreciation, such as, a follow-up call at the end of the day. Just to find out how did your first day go, how did your second day go, how did your third day go. We've also have check-in points through every week. So each manager is expected to check in on the Friday of every single week throughout that process, just to say what worked well, what should we do differently, and where can I support you, and so on and so forth. So that really humanizes the interaction, and that really builds that line of communication between the new hire as well as the manager and the team.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like, there's an ideal component of the culture, right? So you lead from the top, you've got a value-driven environment where it does trickle down, and then there's some empowerment, right, at each level of who gets to, who can represent those values, and they have kind of permission to do it, to do the fun stuff as well as the productive stuff. Yeah. What's your advice to folks who are on the line, and we know that we've got 30% of the people on the phone who this is brand new for them, and maybe their culture isn't aligned that way. Maybe their managers are resisting this, or they're facing a lot of headwind, or they're having, just kind of these difficulties in managing or utilizing technology for onboarding.
Yeah.
What advice can you offer them?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that we quickly realized is A, it's not about you, it's about the individual. B, you cannot be seen as even though we'd like to think we know everything, you don't know everything. And because we don't know everything, it's important for us to leverage the talent across the organization. Involve all stakeholders or potential stakeholders in the solutioning of said problem. We've got our IT teams that are part of projects that really IT has no business to be part of in a normal world, but they bring a specific expertise to the table. They are able to look at things from a different lens. What language I'm speaking is not necessarily the same language that they will understand. So then the task is, how do I ensure that the language makes sense to them? I would say, just get started. For us, we fall into the bracket of we've always wanted to go virtual, but something has just been holding us back. I've quickly learned through this process that it's easy to go from the world of we can't do this to we can, right? And I think a lot of organizations are realizing that we can do a lot of things. We just have to get started, which is typically the hardest part. You're going to fail fast and you're going to learn fast, but you just get started. And if you think about it again from the lens of we need to support the new hire, we're here for the new hire, not necessarily for ourselves, then you get rid of the personal roadblocks that we tend to put in place. The process humps that we tend to put in place. We start to continue to evaluate ourselves, and we start to solution as we move forward.
Yeah. Well, and what I'm hearing you say too is that, there's some attitude there. You have to kind of have a mindset shift that, okay, once we get past the fact that, accept the things you cannot change and be willing to accept the things you can and do something with it. Once you kind of adapt to the fact that, well, this is our new normal. Now what?
Exactly. Yeah. This is our new normal. Now what? I think one of the things that I missed out is, you have to also understand the culture of your organization. And a quick way to do that is, through surveys, through focus groups, and so on and so forth. Just understand like what makes them tick, and then you hammer home and you drive home that message, and that kind of becomes your North Star or your compass as you navigate through. As an organization, we are nimble, so we need to show that we're nimble in this situation, in this scenario, and so on and so forth, and play that up, and that will help you navigate through the uncharted waters.
Yeah, and what you were saying with the North Star, I think a lot of it comes to even defining it in the context of just TA.
Yeah.
Right? So having that onboarding plan, pulling in stakeholders early,
Yeah.
making sure that you've got buy-in as soon as possible before you say, hey folks, this is what we're going to do, and live with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that really speaks to cooperation and collaboration, right? The earlier you can collaborate, the better. So yeah.
Yeah. What about, one of the questions that came up, and I think it's along a similar vein, but a little different, which is, what do I do if I am from an environment where we're just not flexible, we're not nimble, we move really slowly, all this change has been so hard? How do I get buy-in to change the onboarding process with leadership or with my stakeholders?
I think for us, again, if it's an organization that doesn't have their value system in place, I think it is, leveraging best practice, as we call it, preparing that information, preparing that context, preparing some use cases that you can take to the senior leadership team, that you can leverage to speak to them about, why you need to make that change, why you need to pivot. If you're in an organization that has, engagement surveys, I'm sure when you dig down into the data, it will come out. Like it will come out, right? And if it doesn't come out that you need to change your onboarding, then you have perfect onboarding. So at the end of the day, you're good, right? So, but if it does come out, the numbers usually don't lie, and it will say that we need some training, we need some support right at the onset, and so on and so forth. That would help you deliver that message. For us, luckily, as an organization, we have majority of the HR team that is ProSci change certified, change management certified, which means that we speak the same change language across the board. Where, if you look at the ADKAR model, where you have to create awareness and then the desire, and then the knowledge and ability, and then reinforce the message, it really allows us to come up with a framework or a mindset, or tools that support each of those elements, that ensures that we're able to get buy-in. So if you look at awareness, it's awareness. Like, how do you create awareness? What data points do you leverage? What language do your senior leaders speak? Which will inform the way you have to speak as well. There are some folks that only speak numbers. That means you have to only speak in numbers. There are some folks that don't care about numbers, so then don't involve the numbers. There are some folks that want to see things in video, and so on and so forth. Again, it's not about you, it's about the end user. There is a grander goal, a greater goal that you're going to achieve. So you need to ensure that you're doing what it takes to get to that final goal.
Yeah, no, what I'm hearing is almost like in billboards, it's like, know your audience.
Yeah.
If you've got the analytical stakeholder, provide them analysis. If they're the more emotional stakeholder, give them, case studies.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're adapting so that you're able to build awareness in the context that they're going to understand, not just the values you place on a better onboarding process.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to move into Q&A, and we've got a handful of great questions. But before we go into it, love to know what the one thing is you want folks to take away from this discussion.
So the one thing I want people to take is, and this is my favorite quote, and I think I have some people on my team that are on this call, but if you don't take the time, you will eventually take the time. So if you do not take the time to set up proper onboarding, you're going to lose people. And they're going to tell you the onboarding doesn't work, which means you're going to have to go back and eventually focus on the onboarding. If you don't take the time to hire the right profiles, and you just need to throw a body in a role, guess what? That person may not make it. And if they don't make it, guess what? You're going to be back to square one, taking double time to replace that individual. So really, really spend time taking the time. Coming up with a well thought out plan. It doesn't have to be thought out from A to Z. You can go A to F, just get started, right? Sometimes you will find that in execution, you go in different directions, different from where you initially began, but that's okay, right? You fail fast, you learn fast, and then you move on from there. So again, if you don't take the time, you will eventually take the time.
Yeah. I love what you're offering because there's kind of two key messages I'm hearing. The first is the quote, which is essentially invest upfront, you're going to get a better reward, right? And the other is don't let perfect be the enemy of done.
Yeah.
Let's start doing something.
Yeah, most definitely.
Great. Well, so one of the questions that came up was how to ensure that diverse cultures are strengthened even within the context of virtual onboarding. So I know a lot of organizations, I think the question may be around affinity groups, D&I, how are you cultivating or engaging maybe folks in other organizational resources at the point of onboarding?
So for us, we're very intentional with how we engage folks at point of onboarding. You know, we'll look at the profile of the individual, and we're in the process of becoming even more scientific with regards to this. So, you know, you look at the profile of the individual based on the interviews that you've been having, you have a sense, an idea of the sort of profiles they may mesh with. And then when I say we're transitioning to scientific is we run assessments for people who are joining the organization. So based off of the assessment profile, we're able to match with people who have, I guess, the opposite profile that I think they will benefit from. So if they have, you know, from our competency perspective, inspire as something that they don't score high on, you match them up with somebody who has got inspire as a high point. That will help them be successful on their job or in their job. We also look at, you know, diversity of thought. So are there different thinkers within the team that will support this individual as they're coming on board? And then from an inclusivity perspective, it's about, you know, including them and embedding them within the team and the teams. How do you introduce them to their own team and then introduce them to the grander teams? And it's generally from our orientation perspective, just talking to them about all the diversity and inclusivity initiatives that we've run as an organization. You want to be part of the Rexall Care Network and so on and so forth. Like it's little things like that that go a long way.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds, again, back to the investment up front, you are spending a lot of time understanding the folks you're introducing to the organization, but you're also celebrating and being thoughtful about the diversity their perspective brings, right? So, you know, what I loved that you said is, you know, you pair up with the weakest and the competencies, right? So that way you get a chance to experience some growth in an area that may not be as intuitive for that hire.
Yeah, most definitely.
Great. What do you think is the biggest mistakes around remote onboarding? So we've talked a lot about what goes well, but oh my goodness, what would you say? Please don't do these things, folks. This will save you a lot of headache.
I think in time of COVID is don't do things the same way you used to do it. Number one, right? Like you can't expect if you are onboarding someone, and typically what you do is you hire them, you say hi to them, and then you say bye to them, and then they don't see you again for X amount of time. Don't do that. Like you need to be intentional about touching base with these individuals throughout the day. You know, another thing I'd say is don't expect, and this is just normal work world, do not expect people to be present or attentive 100% of the time. A lot of folks are working from home now. And you know, traditional work from home in the past was you work from home, you don't have any distractions, or, you know, you can escape, right? Now there is no escape, because for me, for example, there is no escape. My wife's home, my daughter is home, no escape. I ain't going anywhere, right? So, and what that means is that all those worlds are now clashing. Whereas I could be 100% dedicated to work, I can't be, and in the past when it was all separate, I could be 100% dedicated to work, 100% dedicated to my kid, 100% dedicated to my wife. I can't do that all at once, right? I'm only one person. So expect that there will be some inflection points. There'll be some productivity inflection points. You can expect that people will be operating at a 80 to 110% range, because they have to infuse all those worlds together. So to be looking for perfect is wrong. To be looking for maximum productivity is also wrong, because it's not taking into consideration the individual. I find even within my team, even for myself, I can start at 100% during the day. I will taper off to 50% midday, and then I will probably be 120 later at the end of the day, which in my opinion is even better than what I used to do when I was in the office. So it's things like that that we should not shirk. In addition to that, I have a friend of mine who was currently onboarding into a new position, and the onboarding wasn't done virtually. The onboarding was pretty much non-existent, and the reason behind it was, well, we don't have virtual onboarding. Well, guess what? That friend is now disengaged. This is within the same organization. They're moving from one job to the other job, now disengaged with the entire organization as a whole, where number one, they're doubting themselves in their new job, want to go back to their old job. And number two is like, is this even the organization for me? They didn't take care of me as I was transitioning over. So that's a big risk if we're not intentional and we don't care about onboarding, or we want to just do things traditionally. It's a big risk that we will face.
Yeah. I think what you said earlier about setting people up for success, that's not just a phrase, it really is the way in which you retain your talent. And what you're offering is, we've heard plenty of those stories as well from our client side in certain circumstances where, we're not in a space where you can just shrug your shoulders and say, we don't do that. Because what you're really saying is, I don't care for my people. And trying something and maybe not doing it as effectively is certainly a lot better than not doing anything at all.
Yeah, no, it's true. And, you have to be open and candid with the new hire and say, hey, listen, this is the first time we're doing this. This is what I told my team. I was like, the new hire that I had on my team, this is the first time we're doing this. You are going to be the guinea pig. I'm so sorry that you may not feel connected, and so on and so forth. And, he's been with us for about 4 weeks now. I have his 30-day check-in today. And he's like, I feel so connected to the team. It's like I've been on the team for so long now, for forever, right? And to me, I take solace in that. I'm excited by that, knowing that, myself as a leader, we've set him up for success. The grander team has embraced him. And grander team being TM, as well as HR, and even the grander organization. We're all in this together. We like to say within Rexall, we're all in. And we've kind of tweaked it a little bit during this time of COVID to all together. And we're all in this together to be all in for our new hires.
Yeah. Well, and what you're highlighting there too, I think is important for our audience to think of, which is being transparent about what you are and what you're not. And the fact that the organization is learning at this time is good for that new hire. So I think, that permission granting factor of saying, hey, you're our guinea pig, give me feedback. I want to know, is powerful versus pretending like you've got it all together. Yeah. And, that person doesn't feel comfortable, especially as a new hire, to share the feedback or the experience they're having, So maybe the key there is seek feedback often and then use it to change those behaviors. So constantly recalibrating.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. Well, we've got 2 more minutes. I wanted to ask you kind of as a closer, one of the things that's been on my mind is just what happens after? What is this world for us? And I'd love to hear from you, what your hope is when you think about when we come out of this, whatever this new world is that we're going to be part of.
Yeah. And I think, and that's a really good question. For myself, I keep telling my wife, I'm like, I have these watches. I have not worn a watch for the past 6 weeks, yet I still know what the time is. We have all these shoes. I have worn the same pair of shoes all day, every day for the past 6 weeks. What really matters, right? And when I think about it, what really matters is connections, relationships, the ability to connect with people, the ability to feel that you have people that can rally around you and you rally around them, for everyone to drive towards a specific goal. When I look at our organization now, what keeps us going is the fact that we're able to be empathetic with each other. We like I said, we use Yammer as a resource, and on there you just see thanks, thank you, internally, externally. and you know, our head office team supporting our pharmacy, our store team, saying, thank you guys so much. You guys are superheroes, and so on and so forth, and vice versa. Where in the past, our store teams, there was always this divide. Oh, you guys at head office don't know what you're doing, and blah, 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 blah. But now, guess what? Everyone feels that we are supporting each other through this. And that is what is getting us through. That is what is motivating us through. It's not about how quickly we're stocking the shelves and so on and so forth. It's about how we are connecting with each other to stock those shelves, right? How we are supporting each other to stock those shelves, how we are supporting each other and rallying and connecting with people to ensure that we have the proper protective equipment at our stores. We're sourcing the right materials and so on and so forth. So connection and the importance of connection, and the fact that when everything falls away, what we tend to rely on is the connection that we have with people and the relationships. I think that's my biggest hope that we take away from this time.
Yeah. Well, that resonates for me. I feel it here. And I think all the people on the phone and throughout appreciate knowing that that gratitude has a place in the workforce. And it sounds like that constant appreciation is really feeding that connection. And I hope that it does, that we see that continue in our companies, you know, on the other side of this. Tunde, I have to say, you are such an inspiration as a leader, and I so appreciate what you've offered to us today. I know that there's probably a lot of folks who are going to start to apply for working for your team when you're hiring more people, because you're a great example of what leadership really does look like when done well. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everybody who joined today, and be well.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great one, Kristen, and thanks to everyone that joined.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.